You're listening to the Valley Current.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, Joe. Welcome into the Valley Current. It's been so long. Voice.
It's been way too long. We gotta start doing these on a more regular basis.
Absolutely. Of course, I'm having a late lunch here.
Yeah, it's late lunch for you for sure. 5 o'clock.
I've been trying to eat one meal a day.
Have you? How's that been working?
I've lost about 50 pounds since the start.
50?
50.
Wow, congratulations. It's amazing.
And I've been doing a lot of biking and a lot of yoga.
You're still doing the yoga, huh?
Oh yeah, and a lot of swimming. And what I realized is I would never have been able to do this if I didn't change time zones, because the result of the time zone change, everything is 3 hours ahead. I'm 3 hours ahead, so my day starts at 6 a.m. and I'm done by 10 a.m., which is 7 a.m. California time.
Oh.
So
Nice.
You'll see emails from me like at 3 a.m. in the morning, your time, like, what is this guy doing? I'm up at 6 a.m. And that first 4 hours is like personal time. 6 a.m. to like 10 a.m. is like personal time. So it gives me the ability to really focus on the exercise program.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because all these studies have been done, and they say one of the reasons why a lot of the professional athletes, like golfers and all them, live in Florida, not only for the weather and all that, but when they look at geographically the business and schedules and flying, everything, they do all the metrics, and it makes sense to be in that time zone for all kinds of different reasons.
Well, you're ahead of West Coast.
Right.
And you're still relevant to London and Europe. So you're kind of I could see why New York is more of the center of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are disadvantages, which is clients in California expect you to be wide awake at 8 p.m., but that's 11 p.m. So, and you do have to get sleep. So particularly if you're doing a lot of working out, if you're burning excess calories, you really are kind of forcing yourself into a different sleep pattern as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think, I don't think I could have done it in California. I think California, there was too much time pressure on everything else. So this change has actually been good. And the use of the Aura ring, this ring that gives you the ability to track your data, is very, very valuable. And it really does enable you to see things that are going on. So I highly recommend it. I actually think, and it sort of ties into the topic for today, I think Silicon Valley is actually going to become like a health center for the world. I actually think all of this electronic stuff, these wearable devices, wearable rings, they're all going to get better and better. And the big companies like Apple and Google mainly, and Samsung to a lesser degree, are going to become like health prediction machines.
Oh, okay. So that data will become extremely valuable.
Really valuable in many ways that we have not even yet fully anticipated.
Good point. Yeah.
Because the knowledge of what's going on in the community,
Right.
because the community's data is really there. I think Apple and this company, Apple should buy this company. It's called Aura, O-U-R-A. The website is auraring.com. They really have packed a lot into a ring electronically. And the software is really easy to use, and it gives you two numbers, which is 0 to 100 on what they call your readiness, and 0 to 100 on what's called your how well did you sleep. And there's a relationship between the two. And so you could think of it as like, you really do want to try to measure what can be measured in a way that allows you to see how well are you sleeping, how well are you working out, how well are you doing this, how well are you doing that.
That's interesting.
And the trend lines become really valuable.
I just saw, it made me think of, I just saw this gal and this other guy, they just came up with this new technology. I guess, for instance, we would never know, but our wives and women could tell you that mammograms, such an unreliable technology. They finally came up with a technology, a software that with AI, they were talking about it on a business show the other day, where AI, they pretty much could remove the human element from assessing the breast exams now, because AI does a better job at not only predicting if there's suspicious cancer, but it takes it a step further, which blew my mind. It says not only you get the information, but now the technology will tell you if this person is susceptible in the future to it. It's amazing.
Right. You could say that we're at the dawn of enablement of big data with personalized medicine and with the linkage going back into family history. So my kids and my grandkids and their kids, they'll all have that data.
Right.
And they'll all be able to leverage it. So when people talk about healthy 100 years, which we've been talking about for a while, and people think, oh, that's crazy. No one can be healthy. Healthy for 100 years? You can't even live 100 years. You're going to be healthy? They're shocked. But when you start adding this idea of self-improvement, self-determination of how you take care of yourself, I mean, it's becoming a data-driven world, and the centers for the data are really in Silicon Valley still. I used to think it's more like Harvard, MIT. The East Coast is more health. The West Coast is more computing. But I think the West Coast, and particularly Silicon Valley, is catching up on the health side of things, and we will see more and more products and services coming out of the West Coast and emanating and originating from Silicon Valley. And I do think that's going to like recreate Silicon Valley. I mean, we see it right now in South San Francisco and in all of the Genentech stuff that's played out in that area, and now is extending into Redwood City. And the buildings keep getting built, and the lab space has really got to be lab space. You can't do that from home. You have to have equipment. You have to have expensive equipment. It's not that easy to say, oh, we'll just use Zoom. I mean, yes, you can do a certain degree of it, but there's actual physical X-ray equipment, MRI equipment. All these medical devices are very pricey, and they've got to be housed somewhere, and they've got to be maintained. And so office space or lab space or whatever you want to call that space, it's going to have a comeback. I mean, I'm starting to be convinced that we're moving in the direction where Silicon Valley will actually have a bit of a rebirth. And I don't know if Apple will be the right company. I think they're trying with the watch.
You and I were talking a lot when this pandemic started, what was going to happen to Silicon Valley and with everybody. But I would agree with you now. When you look at the trends now, it's not slowing down. Google Village is taking its first big step. They've already started that project with 20,000 new employees in downtown San Jose over the next 5 years. And then Facebook just bought more space. Someone else just bought more space. That seems to be a popular area now, like not by the San Jose airport, North San Jose, downtown San Jose. Everybody's buying up huge chunks of land.
They're going to build. It's not just for investment. I think they're going to build, and I think they're committed. It's a real commitment. I think that Amazon's taken a little bit of a different, more decentralized approach, where, hey, we can have like 6 different places that all operate different Amazon companies, and we can be more decentralized, and we can accept that. But I think Google and Apple are pretty centric. And I don't know, like, to me, there's going to be a political change that welcomes more of this development than has historically occurred. I don't know exactly how it'll play out, but I have to believe that they are not going to want to lose the Elon Musks of the world to Texas, which, by the way, according to the latest data, most people who leave California are going to one of three places. The very top is Austin, Texas. The second most is Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix.
And the third is Tampa.
Really?
Just reported. Those are like the top three.
Yeah, Florida doesn't surprise me. Arizona surprised me a little bit, but
Arizona still has relatively inexpensive housing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Big part of it. And it's what, an hour and a half, 2 hours by plane, realistically?
You know, speaking of Elon, not to go too much, but that guy's something else. I've grown to admire this guy more and more. I mean, he just is a true maverick, isn't he? We haven't had a true maverick that could just pull the stuff off that he pulls. And, you know, did you hear the most interesting, and I believe him, interview is he sold all of his real estate in California, and he doesn't even own a house. He says, I just live with friends. I love it. He goes, I don't have any expensive personal hobbies. I just love what I do. And I mean, you know, you got to respect a guy like that, right? I do.
Well, he there's an interview with his current girlfriend. Well, I guess he had a baby with, but it was like there was a birth mother.
Right.
But she's a singer and she's too busy to carry the baby, but she gave her eggs.
Yeah.
He gave his sperm. They have a birth mother for the birth.
Yeah.
Not married. I think she is in California, but in the interview, she was like, yeah, I begged Elon to have us buy a new mattress. And he was like, no, we can just use your mattress. And he says, but my mattress is kind of lumpy and old. And you're like a billionaire. You can afford a mattress. And I was laughing because, you know, oddly, this is just the tidbit of knowledge you collect over all these decades. The best mattress in the world is made by a company in San Francisco called McCroskey.
Really?
McCroskey custom builds mattresses.
Really?
And these are like very expensive hand built mattresses. And once you sleep on a McCroskey mattress, you never want to go to a different mattress.
I never heard of that. Really?
Oh, wow. It's a really, really high end, super high end brand. I think they've got like a 9-month waiting list.
Really?
Like if you wanted to buy one, you would literally have to order it.
So what do they have you do? They have you come in and they customize it for your body and all that, or how does that work?
No, they don't do any high tech measurements. They ask you, you know, do you want a firm, medium, whatever you want?
Yeah.
And then they hand build.
Wow.
This mattress, like literally like a handmade item, and it lasts forever. So probably the cost over time is actually cheaper.
So what do you suppose like a mattress cost?
I think it's like $25,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's
not like $1,000 mattress. Wow. It's not like the way you probably think of mattresses is, oh, you go to this mattress depot place.
Yeah.
And you get like, here's $1,000 Sealy and here's $1,000 Beauty Rest. Or now Casper, they deliver mattresses. Like, it's kind of a joke that you can get a delivery of a mattress and use it for 100 days and not pay for it.
It's amazing.
And return it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's amazing to me.
Yeah.
But when you say this rebirth, anyway, kind of made me think that's probably the genuine Elon Musk. He doesn't like spending money. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter if someone says, but there's this mattress, it's really worth $25,000. It'll last you 25 years. It's like $1,000 a year. You're sleeping a third of your life.
Yeah, he said that, and I believe him. There's some people just like that, regardless of the money. He said in the interview, he said, I have just never been, what did he call, a big person who does a lot of self-consumption, he called it. Like, I don't want to have a bunch of houses and a bunch of cars and a bunch of, he did say, which makes sense because he's such a smart guy, right? He goes, the money that I do spend is on jets because it's so important for me, for my time. He talked more about how valuable time is than all these little toys to have.
Well, that's a big toy, right? I mean, that's a super big item to run. I mean,
right.
Can you imagine? But I don't think he has, I don't think he has a yacht or anything.
No, he doesn't. He said that. No, he goes, he doesn't have a yacht, doesn't have any expensive collections or hobbies. I think he's just such a brainiac, that guy. That's an incredible movie made on Twitter. It's interesting to see how that's going to play out, right?
Well, it's got to be tied. It's got to be tied indirectly, in my opinion, to. I want to show this first, just so you can get it. Here's the McCroskey.
Oh, okay. Look at that.
And this is a company that's been around since the 1800s, right?
Wow.
So they show you the hand. I'm not like a shareholder or anything. I'm just a big believer. In fact, one of the things that we wanted to get, and it took us 9 months to get, we had it in Portola Valley, but the movers were like, you really want to move this? It's a really expensive mattress. We don't know if we'll break it going cross country. And, it's such a valuable thing. You don't want it to be broken in transport.
Right.
So we had to put a separate order in. It's got a pretty long warranty, but you can get the flavor of it. Literally, it's old school, literal building, item by item, coil by coil.
Look at that.
Building. Yeah, I mean, the stitching is all perfect, and there's no robotics to this. This is all hand done. And, the reason I raise it is that it ties into this interview with Musk and his girlfriend, which is, spring for a McCroskey mattress. They'll probably give it to you for free.
Yeah.
If you tweet about it.
Right.
It ties into the Twitter thing, which is, I'm convinced it's linked to, he wants to change Twitter policy because he thinks it will have impact on the next election. So his move is very well timed, and it must be, although he probably would deny it, it must be tied to Peter Thiel, who was his partner in PayPal, and did help him get Tesla started. And Peter Thiel is a big, new Republican, neo-Republican. I'm not sure what libertarian. I'm not sure what he calls himself these days. But, he's a big believer that the country needs to be saved, and that there's only a few people on earth, including him, that can save the country. And Twitter does cause people to take notice.
It does.
I mean, more than the front page of the New York Times. Years ago, when I was a kid, getting on the front page of the New York Times was like, wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think getting on the front page of Twitter, or getting to be the most liked or most followed or most whatever.
Yeah, right.
That's like the big thing.
It is.
So if he can actually control the company, I mean, he really wouldn't have to buy, to my way of thinking, he wouldn't even have to buy that much of the stock. I guess he's willing to buy the whole thing.
I think there's a good point there, Jack, and I guess we'll never know, but I heard a theory a while back, and I never thought about it, but it's probably true. The thought was that if Trump wasn't taken off Twitter, and the fact that he was removed from social media, and the fact that they did not bring any validity to Hunter Biden's thing, because they said that was the margin in which Biden won. They felt when they did the data, like the fact that they undercovered the whole Hunter Biden thing, and then everybody took it off social media, everybody on top of that, removing Trump from the social media platforms, it was just a small enough difference to make a difference.
And you would say in America, we're big believers in free speech.
Yeah.
But Twitter is a private company.
I know.
Now, it has many of the attributes of a public utility, just like Google, private company. But can you imagine if Google was shut down for a week or 2 or 3?
Good point. Yeah.
People would be like throwing their hands in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know. Most people would be like, what do we do? They don't even know there's an alternative called Bing. Or they literally don't know.
Oh, Explorer or whatever.
Yeah, they don't know. Like, they don't even know. They just think of the world as Google. Like, the whole world is centric to Google. Like, Google, without Google, gosh, some people think of the internet like it's Google. But that is the internet. Just like people in foreign countries think of Facebook as the internet.
Yeah,
they think of it as they're just logging into Facebook.
Yeah.
So if you think about Google, Apple, and Facebook, and I guess Netflix to a lesser degree, that's entertainment, but now they're going to put all sorts of computer games on Netflix.
Right.
So those are like 4 really big companies that are very Silicon Valley centric. Really Silicon Valley centric. And you could argue Amazon sort of has a facility. It's not as big.
Right.
But these are companies that really have a commitment to Silicon Valley. And they're not leaving. And if anything, they're buying land and they're building buildings. So they see some return to some version of a hybrid or new model of work that we all just don't know what it's going to look like. You can't preordain it. I know people who are tired of being home, and I know people that will never return to an office again.
Yeah.
They just won't.
Interesting times.
I mean, they just look at it like the cost of gas, the cost of parking, the cost of the parking tickets, the tires, the oil changes. You know, you go down a list.
Clothes.
You can even promise them, you can even say, well, we'll pay for all that stuff. They're like, it's too much of a hassle.
Interesting.
And all the restaurants, of course, they can't stay in business.
No.
Having more people.
No. New York's begging. They're desperate right now. I hear that they're making all these, they're trying to figure out how to get people back to the offices because the economy's suffering and crime's going like crazy because of it too, which again is a double-edged sword because then most people are like, well, why would I want to come to work downtown New York now?
Right. I mean, if you're going to go, I mean, if you think about it, if your job doesn't absolutely require you to show up to work, except for online and whatever call-in cycles and whatever email responses and so on, there are just a lot of people that will start thinking to themselves, I don't need to be in a certain place. Yeah. Now, you can't be building these buildings thinking that that's going to be the status quo.
Yeah.
Like, you make an investment in that kind of land and that kind of capital improvement, you have to believe. Now, maybe this whole e-health movement changes the model because it's lab space and it becomes more important. I don't know. But I can tell you that from everything I'm seeing and reading and hearing, it really does look like we're entering this entire new regrowth period in Silicon Valley, where the real estate appreciation will probably just continue, Joe, even with the interest rates going up.
I don't think I would agree with you. I really do. I think I made it, I need to start doing more podcasts, but I was speaking to a group of people the other day, and I really felt like when they were asking me about it, I said, I don't see much change in the Silicon Valley market. Where I do see change, and I'm a big believer in this, and we'll see what happens if it plays out. Where I do see market pullbacks is going to be what I call in the vacation secondary markets, Idaho and, all these places where people thought, I'm going to go buy a second home and I'm never going to work from the office. And these places that have all this real estate and place to build. And it's been because second home market exploded. And, a lot of the non-owner rental properties exploded. And so I think it'll be interesting to me when this dust settles with the interest rates as high as they are. And let's see what happens with inflation, which I think, matter of fact, I think we may already be there, but certainly by the end of the year, we'll be in a recession.
Not if they keep printing money and continue sort of what might be called the, hey, don't worry, because wasn't there some additional extensions on all this eviction moratorium stuff? Like you could argue we're moving rapidly into some new version of socialism.
Yeah, it feels that way, and it kind of makes you nervous because, as you know, the hard part about when you give someone something, it's harder to take it away, right?
you create an entitlement and people feel entitled.
Right.
There's no question about that.
Right.
And what I worry about in California is those entitlements are like something I think I clipped for you that said in Berkeley, they're taking over some hotel and are going to move like 90 homeless people at a fairly high cost. I want to say they're going to spend like very expensive. Like I thought to myself, these people are effectively getting like a $400,000 condo, each of them. I mean, they're going to be living kind of in a shared space in lieu of living on the street. So it's very civil, but someone's got to pay for it, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, it's got to come out of tax dollars. It's got to come out of other places. And it's not like word doesn't get around that, hey, move to Berkeley. They'll provide you with a free place to live.
I
It's
know.
a pretty phenomenal statement, right?
Amazing.
And years ago, of course, people would be like, we're not going to do that. We don't want to attract more homeless people.
Right.
That just adds to the burden on the taxpayers.
Right.
So even with the great wealth, now maybe the solution, and I bite my tongue when I say it, is maybe there's going to be a really much more substantial corporate level California tax on the California-based corporations. And they're just viewed as doing so well that between Google and Apple and Netflix and, you know, the big Facebook, all these companies are doing so well. Maybe that's going to be the approach that says, well, you have to pay when you get over a certain amount of corporate income or profit, you're going to have to pay a much bigger share. And maybe these corporations will just belly up to it. But that historically has not been the way corporations operate. If they feel that they can take advantage of taxes, which of course Apple is well documented with many overseas operations and lots of cash stashed essentially overseas from international sales, that's not coming back to the US anytime soon. So to me, it's an interesting quandary and you have to wonder how it plays out. But in the meantime, I'm sort of starting to turn my view about California real estate will probably continue apace.
Looks that way, doesn't it?
While this, even with what interest rates are now over 5%, aren't they?
Over 5%, yeah.
And I see you're back in your office, so there's people that must be there as well, right?
Yeah, I've actually been in my office for a long time. I haven't really worked out of the house. I do. The market is, which doesn't surprise me. The market is starting to change a little bit. We've just the last, actually, honestly, 2 weeks. You're, believe it or not, seeing places that have not received offers yet. You're seeing 3 and 4 offers instead of 20 or 30. So it did take a little bit of time, but that you know, honestly, I think that's good for the market, if that makes sense. That allows more buyers in now. So I do think now that the shock's over, the paralyzation's over, people realize the rates are the rates. I have to get on with my life. You know, you start back to the real world. But that being said, I just think we're entering into a more, and it'll still be a hot market, but it won't be this red hot, ridiculous, someone paying $500,000 over asking.
But you do get people that still worry that the lending rates are going to go higher, so they try to jump on the train faster, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like when you get above a number like 5%, some people start thinking we better get the loan now.
Well,
it gets above 6%, right?
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people that are in a different status, and money's not an object. They don't think about this, but let's face it, there are still people that were pre-approved to, let's just call it, you know, with a budget buying $1 million, and now they can no longer afford $1 million when you go from 3 to 5. So they come out of the market, or they have to buy a $600,000 or $700,000 house, which doesn't exist. So there is definitely a problem. And I know some people like to think, oh, everybody's got money in Silicon Valley, don't worry about it. But you know, there's most people still get a loan.
Well, they want to for tax reasons as well, right? Because it's still deductible up to like 1.1 million.
Yeah. Plus, you know, honestly, unless you have unless money's no object or there's a strategy, it doesn't, especially at the rates have been the last several years. Why would you pay cash for a house, in my opinion, when you could leverage money that cheap? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Well, what they do here in Florida that you'll find interesting is you'll see people.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode of The Valley Current.